Might be a bit drowsy, so sorry if I'm slow. Anyway, let's get started. So the problem with the LGBT community. So to address the elephant in the room, hello there, Dumbo. This is a clickbait title. I have an honest policy, so there is. But to start off with, I've just finished watching a video by a channel called Carol. She has 4.9k subscribers. And as I'm making this video, that is, she just made a video on the crazy things she's seen in the trans community. And I think this is valid, just to say off the offset that you need to be able to criticise a community regardless of who they are. Like, I don't doubt the autistic community needs criticisms at times. Disability even. Like, there needs to be criticisms. Otherwise it's unhealthy, it's an echo chamber. So, I forgot where I was because I had to go somewhere and do something. I think I was talking about the channel. Anyway, this person, she, I think, made a video on the crazy things she's in the trans community. And from what I can tell, she is a detransitioner. But I certainly have criticisms of her criticisms, if that makes sense. And I even said in the comment that I made, which I'll put up on screen somewhere, which you can pause and read in response to her. But basically there's only a few good points, but not nearly enough to bring down the trans community like she was probably intending to. And also I forgot to mention in the comment itself, but the problem is you're making a big fuss out of nothing. Well, this isn't even the biggest problem, but even then, they just make it out to be the biggest problem, and that's the problem with every community, really. Because when you exaggerate these things, it only makes things more complicated, and so you just ruin everything. Like, the reason we can't necessarily get people transitioning into safety, like people with gender dysphoria and whatever, is because of people like this, and likewise people in this community who make things worse than it really is. I'll mention something about that later. Anyway, there are things like, she said, we wish we weren't trans, which is something that hurts to hear, personally. Not because people have to be trans, but because everyone wants another way, and she also said that. She wishes that there was another way. But she said there was, and didn't provide anything for that. It was bizarre, but, you know, sometimes you just can't reason with people, and that's quite a horrifying thing, really. She also mentioned the sexual influence in the community, like, needs to be toned down. Not because this is almost on the territory of grooming children, as people have said without evidence, but it's because it's harmful to other minorities, and this I agree on. I think it needs to be toned down because I've had bad experiences myself. I'll go into that after this, but yeah, more recently it seems to be like LGBTQ plus is slowly becoming more sexualized, and that's going to be a big issue. Like, as if it wasn't sexualized enough with lesbian porn and stuff. And, you know, weird fact about me is I never used to actually like lesbian porn, exactly. Never found it interesting. But when I realised I was pansexual and also had romantic feelings about guys, I realised, oh, actually lesbian porn is kind of sweet if it's genuine. So that's kind of a nice thing that came out of that. Yeah, I think the sexualization is damaging, and it's not just because people are ace or asexual, aromantic, especially what ace and arrow is, or whatever. But it's because people who just don't like that sort of thing, like, it's a boundary thing that you have to respect. And I think that's something that's not really acknowledged enough in any community. Like, everyone needs space. I need it because I'm on the autism spectrum, obviously. And it gets really difficult when people don't respect my space. Like, I just want to sit in my room all day, usually. Not be bothered by anyone. Not hear any noise outside, much of it. I don't mind birdsong. I don't much mind, like, moving around bits and stuff, or just light talking, but really loud talking. I just draw the line there. That's invading my personal boundary, and yeah. This is why people struggle and have mental health issues. Just simply not respecting boundaries. So obviously we need to do more of that. But that does bring on the next thing I was going to talk about, which is my experience with gay dating apps. Also, there's another one I've got to write down. Anyway, the gay dating apps, well, there's only one I know of. Many are sort of embracing it, and also there's actually some pretty homophobic disability dating apps, to be honest, but I just don't like thinking about them because they're so greedy. They're actually more greedy than the big dating apps, and that's quite horrifying, really, because essentially we're being sold a solution to meet like-minded people that, yeah, we can't because we're on benefits. So it just makes no sense. Like, there needs to be a sort of official government service that's like funded by the council or something, and you could get into a dating app free with proof of a disability. Anyway, gay dating app Grinder. Just say what is, plainly. So I went on here looking for hookups originally, I'll be honest about that. That's because I was stupidly horny for some reason, wanted to lose my virginity. I don't really want to do that so much now. And that was damaging because I essentially made that my whole life. And yeah, I contacted quite a few guys and actually accidentally gave a few my number because I didn't realise that there are many scammers on there, and there are a lot of scammers. Which is also concerning, and Grindr won't do anything about it, but because so many contact you, it's hard to know who actually took your number, so it gets difficult. But it's genuinely creepy at times, because even though this place is like extremely sexualized, it's not exactly comforting. I remember mentioning in my profile even I was vegan, and someone actually tried to debate me about it and failed. So yeah. But the thing that really got me was how many people just sent nudes, and also how many wanted to hook up, and it was just like jarring because I said in my profile I think I wanted to develop a friendship first, develop trust, and then meet in the middle, and nobody really took that offer. And it just seems to me like so many people, they just go on there to get their kick, and that's it. That's a really scary thing, and that again ties into the personal boundary thing. So eventually I managed to figure out that you can turn off like nudes, and there's another one about meeting up or something. I can't remember what it was, but it's like a way to sort of space yourself so you can learn to trust someone. And guess what? I still got nudes, and I still got people wanting to hook up, so yeah, it's concerning. But this to me just spells issues, and I even went as far as to go onto another dating app, which is LGBTQ plus friendly, supposedly, but yeah, like, the only people who wanted relationships with me were men, and the only people who wanted friendships were women, which I found bizarre, because I'm pansexual, I'm not gay. But with the men, some nice people, some didn't even contact me again, but there was one guy, and this experience wasn't great, because I wanted to develop a friendship, and this guy, I think, had some mental health issues which wasn't diagnosed, and he just didn't care to diagnose. So he always forgot what I told him, and also told him about my past with witnessing sexual abuse, because that's also been a big problem in my life that I haven't ever got over, really. Whenever I see people just being impulsive sexually, it's off-putting and scary, to put it short. And he basically pushed me to sort of reveal myself, so. And yeah, eventually I just gave in because I was fed up with life at that time. It wasn't a comforting experience at all. And actually it was so bad that I remember I couldn't orgasm. So yeah, it wasn't because I didn't find he looked attractive, he definitely did, but the person he was, it wasn't great. And eventually I just blocked him out of my life entirely, and that was for the better, I think. I've noticed my mental health improved since. So yeah. So the next thing is one of the grander issues in the LGBTQ plus community, which ironically ties into the video I mentioned earlier by Carol. It's what I call the child mentality. It's where you have this mentality where, like, you just freak out about everything you can't have done right or something. I don't know how to describe it exactly. I would say, like, you have a meltdown about anything bad, but it just seems like the kind of ableist thing to say to an extent, because I do have meltdowns still. I also have shutdowns, which is like, it's all the opposite effect of a meltdown. Is where meltdowns are kind of angry. I think a shutdown is like where you just get so angry or so worked up about something that you just can't move, you can't say anything. It's almost like passing out, but you're still conscious. That's the way I describe it. Yeah, basically there's people in the community, they can get these mentalities that are just stupidly unhealthy and stupid in general and damaging, because if you're just treating something like, oh, you criticised X, you should be cancelled, I hate you, kill yourself, sort of thing. And ironically, I've seen this in Team Fortress 2 actually, from a supposed trans person, where they were getting trolled and they essentially told people to kill themselves because they were trolled. And yeah, I know that's not acceptable, and in a sense, the troll is still at fault. Like, they're both at fault for this, because the troll's playing on a vulnerability, but again, the trans person can't help but just lash out, and yeah. But that's definitely an attitude that needs to change. I think people need to sort of grow a backbone as well to, like, these fake criticisms, I call them, or ungrounded, I don't know what you call them, but these criticisms that have no evidence or backing to it or explanation, similar to the video I mentioned, obviously. But yeah, this child mentality needs to stop, and it's certainly something that makes the LGBTQ plus community seem a bit more childish than it actually is. I've noticed it less online, I think, but more in person, I think. There's definitely a level of maturity that just doesn't make sense, and also just infantilises them. Like, do you really want to be a community that's infantilised, like the autistic community is? It's just sad to see as well, because I'm also here as like a mature adult. I'm told I'm well spoken and smart, and I'm one of the few sort of LGBTQ plus people that people feel comfortable talking to for some reason, and that's something. Like, what am I doing right that others are doing wrong? And that gets me thinking a lot. It just concerns me. Anyway, the next thing I was going to talk about was the absurd claims in the video, but I think I already talked about it. But remember that you need to approach things with no bias and a lot of critical thinking. And that's it. That's all you need for this sort of thing. Because I think if you approach it with bias, people immediately turn off, and people just start suspecting you of like being a blind person, being led by the blind person or something. It varies. Well, they certainly do exist, but again, being blind leading the blind and stuff, that's not good, and I think that's the same with the person in the video, Carol. She's a blind person being led by blind people, and I think she's even sort of talked about these very sort of transphobic places like LGBT Alliance, I think is one. I can't remember, I looked at her feed because I was curious, like, how detransition was this person? Was she detransitioned from not just gender but political ideology? And it turns out, yeah, she seems to be, and that's concerning. But again, these are absurd claims, but she has these absurd claims in the video that just aren't backed by anything. She calls trans ideology a delusion. And I've made a video called Trans Delusion only because I wanted to appeal to transphobic people to explain how a trans ideology was valid and scientifically proven. It's not really an ideology, it's more that people have gender dysphoria and also people want the choice to appear as trans. And I think that's acceptable, but I think the people who exaggerate the problems, ironically, LGBTQ community does this too. Other people are saying like they're groomers or I forgot the other thing, but they exaggerated to the point where it's almost newsworthy, which is concerning. It's terrifying. So I can't even begin to say how fucked up this all is and how wrong it is to also do this sort of thing, because it's dehumanising. I think the moment people have a dehumanising mentality, that's when you've just lost any validity. So if you can't recognise that there are people on the other end, then yeah, you don't have any say in this. This is why people who commit wars and war crimes are just the worst people in history. Luckily, as Vladimir Putin is now, and the Chinese Communist Party. Just that dehumanising aspect. This ties into the other fucking topic, which is almost funny, but it's not. Cancel culture. I'm pretty sure people hear this a lot, and I actually think I'm worried for the progressive community for cancel culture, because really it's censoring free speech, and it's an attack on progress, let's say. The reason I think it's an attack on progress is because people are not allowed to speak their minds and criticise. I admit there's a difference between speaking your mind and essentially spreading hate crime or violence. I think those are the lines we draw, but again, you should be allowed to say those things, and people have to acknowledge the consequences. And I'll talk about that after this bit. But there are severe consequences to cancelling someone, as well as someone who's just acting out of rage or exaggerating. It's extremely dangerous, and eventually, with cancel culture, if you cancel even like the people who are more agreeable than others, then you just don't have anyone left. This strive for perfection is creating a massive divide, and that's a massive problem, because if you have people who you think are perfect, flaws are going to show sooner or later, and you're going to have something else to hang on to. Like, this is why we criticise like the brain fart. Why we criticise like paedophile communities, let's say. Like, they're not necessarily wrong in terms of who they are. They're just wrong if they're pushing like an agenda where they condone paedophilia. And ironically, a lot of people are not even researched on the science of this, and I am, because I've been affected by this directly. It's from my childhood, and it's been harmful knowing that people are willing to essentially execute people who are paedophiles, but they can't help it. That's the thing. And you're not changing anything by trying to change their outcome, or not change their outcome, kill them, harm them in any way. That's not changing anything. And this is what I mean by cancel culture, because if you cancel someone that's even remotely a bit wrong, again, you just end up with nobody else, and you'll just be alone all your life. I've stopped striving for perfection, and actually I've noticed an improvement. It's pretty much helped my mental health a bit. It's made me wiser, I think. The more people that realise that, the better it will become. And obviously, I think a lot of the world is sort of hinging on balance. And that's something that's pretty fundamental. And every good side has a bad side, and that sort of thing. But we can always try to strive for a better world. Not perfect, but better. And that's more important than ruining someone's entire life for, say, being a transphobe once, or saying the N-word in the past. I definitely used to. I said the F-word back in the past, I said the R-word back in the past, anything. I definitely had some wrongdoings in the past, and I think if I was cancelled for that now, well, you're not helping yourself. That's all I'll say. And that ties into the next thing. Taking responsibility and accountability for claims and cancel culture. This is for everything, really. I think if you can't take responsibility or accountability, then you're not being a responsible, accountable human. Essentially, you're not even being a human in a civilized society, for that matter. To me, it just demonstrates a complete failure of recognising human life, and it's actually just endangerment. I'd go as far as to say that most of this is probably child endangerment, because how many of these people who are affected by the false claims are parents or even children, and who of these people are cancelled who are children or parents or children, something like that. Makes you have to think deeper, because there's always something that's bigger in play there, and you're not necessarily benefiting anyone. It's like when people sort of sucker punch random people on the street for some reason. It's fucked up way. I think an equal punishment is deserving there. They get sucker punched themselves, or they get arrested for a certain amount of days, that sort of thing. And again, that person needs to take responsibility and accountability, and likewise, I think people who sort of doxing people, with good reason, to be fair, they also need to understand the consequences of their actions, and yeah. I think that's all I've got to talk about. I'm interested to know what people think. It definitely isn't the normal video I make. I only really tend to make this when there's something important to talk about, and I think this is important. I try my best to talk about everything I could remember. It's definitely a concerning situation. And after seeing this video, I just wanted to speak out about it, because I think it's important. And also, don't get yourself in an echo chamber. I'm definitely not encouraging people here to sort of listen to just me. Listen to someone on the opposing side, use critical thinking. Basically pick at everything you can find that is inconsistent and not sounding very good, anything like that. And for all I know, I could be wrong about this entire thing. I'm willing to be proven wrong. That's the point of being unbiased. It's just that current evidence leads me to a different side. And I actually stand in the middle in terms of political ideology because of this. I don't think any side is right or wrong. But truth is louder than that. That's what I try to follow.